Hello, this is the Cogitarium. We are the Cogitators, and we are sitting for our third series of conversations about some of the things that are affecting us during the COVID-19 pandemic. And I'm Bev Holden from Clear Thinking, and I'm surrounded by my esteemed colleagues who are going to say who they are.
Hello there, John Bartlett from Project Libero.
Hi, Pete Bryceland from Tipping Point.
Hi, I'm Sarah Rudder from Ginger Dog Development.
And whilst we wait for Jeremy Paxman to turn up, the focus of this conversation and this thinking is community. So I guess we've been having conversations that have made us think that this is a really useful topic for us to think about on behalf of others. And I am going to ask the question in a moment, but for now, let's have an opening round of appreciation for community and our the sense of community that we have. What like to reflect on that is appreciative about the communities that you are part of. Let's start with Sarah and go backwards, just by way of a change. So Sarah, then Pete, then John, then I.
What do I appreciate about community? So I live in quite a small village in East Sussex, and I think what I really appreciate about community at the moment is the support that people are showing for local businesses. So we have a couple of pubs in the village, a baker's in the village, and a couple of shops, and I'm really noticing, and have noticed over the last 6 months really, that people have really supported those businesses in every way that they can, and I think that's about creating community for me.
So Pete.
So I guess for me, the first thing that springs to mind is I'm a member of BNI, Business Networks International, and it's kind of curious where you can find community. You can find community almost anywhere, and I think that's what I've been appreciating about that, is that with a little bit of effort and a little bit of reaching out, you can create community anywhere. And I've really appreciated being part of BNI the last sort of 6 months, because it's helped me keep in touch with businesses. It's helped me keep in touch with people that I know and like, and it's I think you can find community anywhere.
So for me, I've done a couple of training courses around thinking environment, and because of that, there's been community of practice for people to come back and revisit the training, and there's a practicum series to go through now. So it's been a chance to connect with people from a number of different countries as well, not just the UK, and to get some very differing perspectives about what that community of thought means to them, and all virtual, but all connected by that sort of ethos and training. So that's my community appreciation.
Gosh, so I am awash with communities in a really good way. So here we are, the four of us. We're a little Cogitarium community, and we keep coming together and keep thinking together, and I really appreciate the fact that we do that together. And then there's Playgroup, and a lovely bunch of people who focus around our cards for clear thinking and play and support one another together, and that's a really, really good community. There's my Time to Think community, like you, John. I've got that community of thinkers, and the Monday Massive, as we call ourselves, because we meet on a Monday at lunchtime and we reflect on our experiences in the thinking environment. And yeah, I'm part of, there's the rugby community. I'm just part of loads of different little communities, and it's really important. It's that sense of belonging that's a human driver that I think I value the most, and being a contributor to those communities is really important. So I'm very grateful to have my fingers in a lot of community pies. It feels good to be involved in those things and to be with those people. Okay, so our question is about community, and it is: what makes now the perfect time to think about our organisations as connected communities? So who would like to go first?
So shall I kick us off? And this question came from a conversation, and actually that conversation came from some coaching conversations I was having with people who are or who have joined organizations in the last 6 months. So they've joined during the time when we are not able to be together. And I think for me, the reason that now is the time to be thinking about that is that I think we're all starting to feel this sense of being separate. You know, the kind of initial phase has worn off, hasn't it? And we're very much settling into a sense of, right, this is how my world is. Like, you know, I work from home now, and for some of us that's not so very different, because we've always had home offices and we've, you know, self-employed, and this is how we do work. But for many people, I think it's, you know, the initial kind of interest and excitement and working out how it works and all of that stuff is gone now, and really there's a sense of this is how it is. And if you're joining an organization, or you have joined an organization over the last 6 months, how do you connect? How do you feel part of the team or part of the community? There's something for me around what we miss out on now is all of those small, what we would class as small interactions. You know, the making a coffee, passing each other in the corridor, you know, happening to wander out of the office at the same time to go and get a sandwich and have a chat on the way. Though all of those things have gone, and those are the things that create community. Those are the things that create connection. And I think what I'm hearing, what I'm seeing from people is that a lot of the interaction now is very transactional. It's very much about, we're coming together to make a decision about this. So I guess the thinking for me is how do we build back in some of that personal interaction? How do we build in that connection? And how do we, if we are managing teams and running organizations, how do we enable people who are joining those teams to become part of that community? Because that community was perhaps already quite strong before you went into lockdown and working from home. So the people who knew each other before still know each other and will still probably be having that interaction. But how do you then bring those new people into that community in a way that's meaningful for them and helps them feel connected? Where are we going from me, Pete, I think?
Yeah, thank you. Everything you said there, I think, you know, they're really salient points in terms of that, and in terms of, I think what we may have forgotten about how we created community before was that, you know, what you're talking about that's missing now was built into meetings before. So you would turn up 10-15 minutes before, and you would get a coffee and you would have a chat with the people in the room before you sat down to a meeting. And now, just because we're online doesn't mean we don't have to do that, because like we came together today, and before we started doing these, we had a bit of a chat. And I think, you know, it is a case of being conscious that although the medium may have changed, you know, how we create community is still the same way. It's still getting together. It may be that, you know, if people are working from home, they can still reach out and contact each other. I've had a couple of conversations with coaching clients myself, where I've just asked the question, what's in the way of you phoning somebody up? You know, because we all hanker for, oh yeah, it'd be really nice to have a conversation with them, oh, but I don't want to disturb them. Whereas, like, you know, when you bump into somebody in the corridor, it's kind of easy and natural, but perhaps we just need to, you know, start to re-engineer those bumping into each other. So, you know, just dropping a message, or and I think it's a perfect time to do it, because, you know, we're at the start of, you know, this being a way of life. So, you know, we should be responsible now for setting it up the way we want to set it up. It's our choice to do that. I think sometimes we forget that we can choose how we set these things up, you know. So yeah, it's a perfect time to start thinking about community and, you know, getting feedback from employees within the business, particularly, you know, with the leaders. They should be asking their staff, okay, what do you miss about meetings? What did you really enjoy when we had meetings face to face? And how can we emulate that going forward? Ask that question. I think it's a perfect time. So how about you, John?
So for me, there's something here about being purposeful. And many communities grow up around a purpose, whether it's, you know, stamp collecting, you know, time to think, you know, work. But then once we've got that broad purpose, we find we have more in common as human beings, or we actually, you know, we work together, but we both are interested in cricket or whatever it might be. And I think it's finding the things that bring us together. There's definitely something about the technology. I'm finding that for some people, there's an assumption that every call will be a video call now, which doesn't suit some people. There's definitely research that suggests that millennials and Generation Zs are uncomfortable on the telephone, won't pick up a call. So if that's the case, how do we change that? For me, as all of you on this call will be aware, I'm known for, you know, calling, and if I don't get you, then I don't get you, and I'll leave a long rambling voicemail, and that's fine. You'll get back to me when you get back to me, which is, you know, that's something we do, and that's okay. And I'm not going to be offended if you're not there instantly. So there's something about that's an overt communication style that I have with each of you, that you know that that's what I am, that I'll happily pick up the phone and call and talk at length, or, you know, or leave that message for later. And I think most people didn't enjoy meetings because they were often, you know, contests, performative things within a workplace, and they were dominated by certain people. Whereas this, because we're all on the screen and we've all got an equal space, if the meetings are managed well, and I know I'm biased with a bit of some of the time to think approaches, but if meetings are managed well and everybody gets an equality of voice, everybody gets a chance to speak, everybody knows it's going to be their turn, that creates a chance for people to bring more of themselves. And this ties in with something that MHFA England, who, as you'll know, I'm a mental health first aid instructor, Pete's an aspirant as an instructor, their campaign around bringing people's whole selves to work, and whether that be protected characteristics, LGBTQ, whether it be race, but also, you know, whether it be just all the things that you are and could be at work. And when you do research, there's an awful lot of people say, well, I am a different person at work to the person I am at home. Well, I find that, you know, I understand it, but I just think that's a barrier to community. So yeah, that's mine. Sorry, it's a bit of a brain dump there, but that's my thinking.
So I think that a meeting is not a community, and I think that that's where some of the confusion lies, that people are coming together to have conversations about decisions or updates on information and tasks, but because the focus is transactional, like Sarah says, it's not enhancing the community, it's just getting stuff done. And we facilitated a session this week where we had some stuff that we wanted people to think about, but this is a group of people who are coming together to make some big stuff happen, some transformational stuff happen in their organisation. And really interestingly, I don't know whether we do it anyway, but we were very deliberate about creating a connection between those people. And it meant doing things like having a look at the dog that somebody had in the background that barked. Bring me the puppy, show me the really cute dog. And so people were getting into it, and there was one guy with a background that made it look like he was going to have a weather map appear because he was over to one side, he had a blank wall, and so we called him the weatherman. And somebody loved orange twirls and confessed how many she'd eaten that day. And And actually, it's those things that even. So, Pete, you were saying about at the start of the meeting where we do all of that stuff. I think it was also possible this week to do that as part of the meeting. It was just whenever there was a moment where people were beaming back from breakout rooms, and it was like, well, come on, then show me the dog now, right? Let's have a look at the dog. The dog's gorgeous, and we just engendered some conversations that allowed those people to get to know one another in a way that built that sense of community, and it's only now that I'm thinking that we're doing that. I don't think I thought we must make sure we make reference to dogs and chocolates and the weather in order to build this community. It just was a very natural way of bringing that group of people together and breaking down barriers and helping them to feel less fearful about each other and expressing emotion and feelings as a way to get them to connect with one another. But if the only way organisations are bringing people together is to just get stuff done, then we're missing out on building that community. And then I think people feel a little bit awkward about the forced stuff that gets done. So whether it's a quiz or, it's not everyone's forced fun, it's not everyone's thing, but it's done with the best of intentions. And so I think the constraints that we're under give us an opportunity to really think about this question and think about, we're not just a bunch of brains and bodies who do work. Actually, we are a community. We have one purpose. We are behind our brand, whatever that brand is. We believe passionately about our product. So let's prove it. Let's prove it by being a community that comes together around that, not just to do the transactional stuff, but to share stories and have great conversations about what really matters. And that should be part of all of that communication that happens, not just the getting stuff done stuff, so that people can be a force for good as part of that organisational community. That's what I think. So what else? Let's sort of open it up rather than a round. What occurs to people in terms of this question about creating connected communities in organisations?
So I'm hearing a thread coming through in what you're all saying, and it's something that John and I've been doing some chatting about, and I've been doing some work with people around, which is about the sort of the kind of unwritten rules that we've created around how we work right now, which doesn't allow for that space that you're talking about there, for that connection. So I think this again, it kind of ties back into some of the other things we were talking about around this sort of consciousness and raising my own consciousness of the rules that I'm creating for myself about how I work. Meetings do not have to go from on the hour to on the hour. I don't have to go directly from one meeting to the next meeting. Those aren't rules that anybody ever has written down, or that people in charge of organizations have set for anybody. I don't have to sit at my desk from 7 o'clock in the morning till 6 o'clock at night and not take a break. So it's that awareness, isn't it, of what am I doing here that's actually sabotaging my ability to either create or be part of a community, and how could I shift that to do something that's more supportive of community experience for everybody that I'm working with.
Yeah, so we're not sleepwalking into it. We're deliberate and intentional about it, which is really important. Thinking about the kind of spaces we want to create, because like you were saying earlier, this is not a temporary thing anymore. This is offices have been shut till after Christmas, so we've got another 6 months of people finding a way to navigate this. It doesn't have to be a miserable 6 months where people are looking at the end of it as the light where they can go back to being in the office, because what if that doesn't happen either? So yeah, really interesting. What else? What more do you think or want to say?
I feel like some organisations are only now kind of going, oh, okay, so it's going to be like this, and it's, where have you been for 6 months? It's like only now are you thinking, right, we now need to sort out whatever this is going to be. So I think there's been a lot of focus on what I would call hurry up and wait, where, right, we've got to do this, we've got to turn our business around and we get everything, that's great. So we get, products on shelves, or we get, things sent to the supplier, or whatever it is. And then the people stuff, oh yeah, we might have broken somebody months ago. Maybe we should look at that and think about it. And, you know, it's like the HR is seen as the pink and fluffy stuff, but hey, it's the really hard stuff because, you know, how you talk to people, all that sort of thing. But I think we've been so busy on operational matters in a lot of organizations that we haven't stopped to think about and what does this do to people. We're so busy, and I understand why, we're so busy keeping the business afloat, alive. We need to keep people employed. That's better than anything else we can do for them, is to give them a job, but it's not. A friend of mine works for a large international, and they went through the financial crisis in 2008 in exactly the same way. They planned long in advance. They held high cash reserves, and very quickly they said to people, it's going to be reduced hours, and they instituted that almost at the start. Now, bearing in mind, his head office is in Arizona, which has been quite badly hit by COVID, and the rules are very different over there. But they already shared people's hours out so that everybody took a hit, and that to the very top of the company, to the very bottom, but everybody took it. And everybody had that reduced hours, and we were all in this together, but everybody was still employed. And when in the financial downturn in 2008-9, they didn't lose one employee across 18,000 people. And they're aiming to do the same this time, you know? So it can be done, I think, at times, but it requires you to think about, who do we want to be? How do we want to do stuff? I mean, I know in the previous situation, because healthcare was a problem for people, they set up their own GPs at head office. They bought in a GP rather than used insurance and things. So I think it comes down to putting people front and center of it, not just if they don't have a job, there'll be nothing left type stuff. So radical stuff, I know. But
It kind of reminds me of something that Simon Sinek says in Infinite Games, when he's talking about how to build a company or a corporation that lasts. And a lot of that is down to the values of the company. It's down to the cause behind the company. It's down to the community of people that you create within the company. And I think just because we're working virtually doesn't mean that those things have to change. In fact, I think they become more key. So it is a case for, and I think it rests largely with leadership as opposed to further down the chain. It is about them setting that direction and leading that and saying, okay, we're still a company with the same values. We still appreciate the same things. We still want the same connections. We still want to build in the same way, and becoming again consciously aware. We've talked about this a number of times, but for me it seems to be that we have almost handed over to that unconscious instinctive sort of like just go along with what's shown, and obviously what you see is all there is, unless you start looking elsewhere, and then you'll see something different. And I think we need to be setting that attention and setting that intention. So this is an ideal time to start reconnecting with how we build our communities, what's really important to us. When we talk about, I mean, even people talk about HR, it's almost like they don't want to say human resources anymore. So they take the human out of it so that they don't have to deal with that person aspect. But, the world is made of people, and companies are made of people. And so when we reconnect with those people and we create the communities, and this is an ideal opportunity to do that this time right now, reconnecting, setting that intention. And I think that's the key thing, is setting that intention to rebuild and reconnect as communities. Find that common purpose, even if it's just there's a company that a friend of mine works in, and I've joined their fantasy football league, and so now I've got an entirely new community. But it's a way of them coming together and talking about something other than how many people we're making redundant, how long before we can open up the offices, how long before we do this. But it's actually getting back to connecting with people on a different level again. And I think we just have to do it and be conscious about doing it.
So Pete, my freshest thinking, it links to something you've just said, and that is that when we started Breathing Space, we didn't know what it was going to be, but it's like that fantasy football. So we've created a space where people can come. They don't. It's an escape from the reality of what they're doing, and they hear stories and they can think about what that means for them and how they might apply it in the real world, and they're part of that community. But it's that it's doing something different, and we deliberately engineered it with very clear values about what it was for Kate and I. So it's very selfishly set up for Kate and I's benefit, personal benefit, as our learning way of learning. So I think communities and organisations have got an opportunity to deliberately create things that give them a narrative that is beneficial to the culture. So one of the things that now people aren't able to do is bump into each other in the canteen, by the coffee machine, and complain and whine and moan about the organisation, to do that sort of build that destructive narrative. It's not as easy to do that because they're not bumping into people. So you have to deliberately go and have a conversation, and maybe that's not so easy. So actually, organisations and leaders in organisations have got an opportunity to really, really do something amazing with the culture, because they can shape that narrative very deliberately. So far from being out of control, there's loads more control. And what you were saying about human beings, there was one of Kirsty Mack's leadership conversations a couple of weeks ago was with Chris Hallam, and he was talking about followership. And in the comments, we got to a point where we started talking about humanship. We don't need to worry too much about leadership and followership if it's about human to human interactions, and we talk about being really good humans in organisations. And maybe that's the thing that should fuel these connected communities in organisations. How do we make humans marvellous, and give them platforms in which they can think with each other and enjoy each other's company in order to make good stuff happen in the organisation. So what's your freshest thinking, Sarah?
Actually, something that's just occurred to me while you were talking, and not something that I've said out loud in this session so far, but for me, I guess it also links back to you guys right at the beginning talking about all the different types of community that you're part of. And I think what I'm noticing is that I've in many ways consciously decided over the last few months to put my energy into particular communities that I'm part of, and I've therefore withdrawn myself from other communities. And again, it's a conscious decision, and maybe that's something for people to have a think about, is how much energy have I got to spread around in all my different communities, and which ones are serving me, which where is that best placed, where do I want to focus that time in continuing to build community. And work is a very obvious one, but outside of work as well. If you're feeling spread thinly, then maybe some of that stuff isn't serving you in the way that it could do. So my freshest thinking is around which of these communities are the ones that I want to put my time and energy into, into being part of, and consciously being part of, rather than just being in.
Pete, how about you? What's your freshest thinking?
So something that occurred to me while you were talking, Bev, as well, was something maybe not particularly fresh. Actually, it was probably about 10 years ago now. I was part of a small community of people, and we used to get together just to for productivity. So we all worked from home. We're all self-employed. We'd met on a training course, and what we used to do is occasionally we would set up sort of like a conference call, and we'd all say what we were going to do for the next hour, but we'd also just have a chat and a catch up and that sort of thing, and then we'd go off and do whatever we were going to do for the next hour or two, and then we'd come back and then we'd have another chat, and then and it was almost a way of creating the productivity, but B, I think the back end of that was just that we had a little bit of community where we were just sort of like, it was a natural break. It was like, meeting around the coffee machine, or the water cooler, or in the staff canteen sort of thing, and we can easily replicate that. I mean, we've got the technology is available to us to do whatever we like. So companies could have a break room set up permanently on Zoom where people just drop in and out. It's not difficult. So that's my freshest thinking, I think.
Super. So John, final thoughts go to you in terms of freshest thinking.
Well, I'm going to go even farther back than Pete for my freshest old thinking in some ways, although it ties into something people were saying earlier about Simon Sinek, I guess. So I started out in management in the military, where you're taught about servant leadership and the idea that actually you stand for the person next to you, and then you stand for the flight, and then from that you stand for the squadron, and then from that you stand for the wing, and and bit by bit each little part of the organization means more to you. Then it's your station, then it's the command and stuff, and so you have a responsibility to different parts of it. And then within the base, perhaps you have secondary duties, so you're in charge of the rugby club, or you look after the creche, or whatever it might be. And in all of these things, we had a responsibility to engender and foster a sense of pulling together, of shared purpose, of common goal, whether it was the CAP badge, whether it was the mission of the organisation, but also, obviously in the military, some very clear values. But I definitely think there's something about managers creating the space for people to speak, to be open, whether that be in a lot of the ways that we've discussed here. But I think, and sometimes that might just be shutting up and getting out of the way, and letting stuff happen, not trying to be the big boss, but actually kind of going, you guys are doing great. Then let me know if you need anything, some money, some time, some resource, I'll sort that out for you. I'll get out of your way. So I think I think it all comes back to purpose. And if you're clear about your purpose with community, you can really go places. So that's my freshest thinking.
Thank you, John. So the Cogitarium is adjourned. Let's return later. But for now, we are adjourned.